Eli Turner had lived alone for so long that even the sound of his own footsteps felt strange to him. Every morning he woke before sunrise, fed his horse, and checked the fences. He spoke to no one, and no one came his way. The land stretched wide and quiet, and he had learned to live with that silence. Once he used to like it. Now it just reminded him of all that was gone. His parents had passed when he was young, and the woman he once loved had moved east with her family. The ranch had stayed, and so had he, like a shadow too stubborn to fade. One afternoon, after fixing a broken gate, Eli decided to ride toward the canyon. The wind had been strange that day, carrying a dry whisper from the hills. He wasn't looking for anything, just following the open sky. His horse Dusty trotted slow, the old saddle creaking with each step. Then Eli heard something, a sound faint and broken like a cry that had been swallowed by the air. He stopped listening. It came again, soft and weak. Without thinking, he turned his horse toward the sound. He rode through the brush and followed the faint noise until he saw something that made him pull the reins hard. Under a lone cottonwood tree stood a figure tied to the trunk. The man's head hung low, his long dark hair falling across his face. For a moment Eli just stared, not sure if what he saw was real. Then the man moved slightly and Eli hurried down from his horse. The man was young, maybe not much younger than Eli himself. His wrists were bound tight with rough rope, his clothes torn, and his lips dry from thirst. Eli took his knife and cut the ropes carefully, catching the man before he fell. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. Eli gave him water from his canteen, letting the stranger drink slowly, then lifted him onto the horse. He didn't know who the man was or what had happened to him. Maybe he was a traveler, maybe he had enemies, but none of that mattered right now. Eli just knew he couldn't leave him there. He guided the horse back home as the sun dipped low, painting the desert in colors of gold and red. The stranger stayed quiet, leaning weakly against Eli's shoulder. When they reached the ranch, Eli carried the man inside his small cabin and laid him on the bed. He lit a lamp, warmed some water, and began cleaning the wounds on his arms and shoulders. The man stirred, whispering something too soft to understand. Eli spoke gently, telling him he was safe, that no one would hurt him here. After a while, the stranger opened his eyes, dark and sharp like the night sky after a storm. He looked at Eli for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Eli gave him a small smile and said, "You're all right now, rest." The man's eyes slowly closed again, and he fell into a deep sleep. For the next few days, Eli took care of him. He cooked simple meals, made sure he drank water, and changed his bandages. The man barely spoke at first, only nodding in thanks. When Eli asked his name, he said softly, "Kai." The name fit him somehow, short, strong, and calm. Eli didn't ask more. He figured the man would talk when he was ready. The ranch was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty this time. Eli found himself listening for small things. The sound of Kai's breathing, the soft steps when he walked outside to feel the sun. At night, Eli sat on the porch thinking how strange it was to have someone else nearby again. For years, he'd lived like a ghost among the hills. Now there was another heartbeat in his house, and it made the silence softer. As Kai grew stronger, he began to help around the ranch without being asked. One morning, Eli found him chopping wood by the barn. His movements were steady but still weak. Eli walked over and said he didn't have to do that. But Kai just smiled faintly and kept going. His smile was rare, but when it came, it carried warmth that reached farther than words. Sometimes they talked a little in the evenings. Eli told him about the land, how it changed colors in every season, how he could tell the time by the way the light hit the canyon walls. Kai listened quietly, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't speak much about himself, only small things. About his village far south, about how the river near it shone blue even in the dark. Eli could tell there were heavier stories behind his silence, but he didn't push. Days turned into a week, then two. The mornings started to feel different. Eli would wake and see smoke rising from the fire pit outside, where Kai was already boiling water for coffee. Sometimes they worked side by side, fixing fences or tending the horses. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Something unspoken had grown between them, a kind of quiet understanding that didn't need to be explained. One evening, a soft rain began to fall. It was rare in those parts, and Eli stepped out to smell the wet earth. Kai was sitting on the porch watching the horizon. The rain tapped lightly on the wooden roof, and for a while neither spoke. Then Eli said quietly, Been a long time since I've had someone to talk to out here. Kai glanced at him and said, Been a long time since I've had someone listen. Eli looked at him then, really looked, and felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known in years. It wasn't just kindness or pity. It was something deeper, quieter, like the first beat of a heart waking up after a long sleep. That night, as the rain faded, Eli sat by the fire while Kai slept. He thought about how strange life could be. A man rides out into the hills expecting nothing, and instead finds a stranger who changes the air in his home. Eli's cabin didn't feel cold anymore. Even the walls seemed to hold warmth. The sound of the fire mixed with Kai's slow breathing, and Eli felt a peace he hadn't known in a long time. He realized then that loneliness wasn't just about being alone. It was about forgetting how to feel. And now somehow, through the quiet company of a stranger, he felt something return. He couldn't name it yet, but it was enough to make the night feel alive again. As dawn came, Eli stepped outside. The sky was pale blue, the land fresh from the rain. The world smelled new. Inside, Kai stirred awake. Eli heard him moving, light steps across the wooden floor. For the first time in years, Eli smiled without reason. Something had shifted inside him. Small, steady, and real. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for sure. His heart had started beating strong again. Eli woke early the next morning, the soft light of dawn spilling through the cabin window. The air smelled clean after the rain. He stepped outside, boots crunching softly against damp earth. The world felt different, calmer somehow. Inside the cabin, Kai was already awake, sitting by the fire and stirring a pot of coffee. He looked stronger now, his color returning, his movement steady. Eli nodded at him and Kai gave a small smile in return. It wasn't much, but it meant something. They spent the morning fixing the corral fence that had fallen in the wind. Kai worked quietly, his hands sure, his focus sharp. Eli found himself watching him more than once, curious about the kind of life that had taught a man to move like that. Steady, careful, always listening to the wind. After a while, Kai caught him looking and said softly, "You don't have to worry about me. I'll be gone soon." Eli paused, hammer in hand. "Ain't no rushin'," he said. "You can stay till you're ready." Kai didn't answer, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of pride and gratitude. For the rest of the day, they worked side by side, the silence between them easy and natural. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Kai finally spoke more. He told Eli about the place he came from, a small valley far to the south where the river ran clear and the land was green even in summer. He spoke of his family, his people, and how he had been away from home when trouble came. He didn't give details, and Eli didn't ask. It was enough to know that Kai had been through something heavy, something that had pushed him far from where he belonged. Later, as the fire burned low, Kai said quietly, "You didn't have to help me." Eli stared at the flames for a long moment. "Maybe not," he said finally, "but I couldn't ride past a man left like that. I've been on the wrong side of silence before. Didn't want to see it happen again." Kai looked at him, his expression unreadable, then gave a slow nod. "Then maybe we were both meant to be found," he said softly. The words stayed with Eli long after Kai had gone to sleep. He sat by the window, listening to the wind outside, and felt that quiet stirring again in his chest. It wasn't something he could explain, but he knew it was real. Days passed, and life on the ranch fell into a rhythm. They worked together each morning, fixing, mending, tending to the horses. Eli noticed small things. How Kai would stop to listen to the breeze before a storm. How he spoke gently to the animals. How he treated every task with quiet care. There was strength in him, but it wasn't loud. It was the kind that came from patience and endurance. One afternoon, Kai was packing his few things into a small bundle. Eli saw him from the porch and felt his stomach tighten. He didn't say anything at first, just watched as Kai tied the bundle and slung it over his shoulder. "You leaving already?" Eli asked quietly. Kai looked up. "It's time," he said. "You've done enough. I can't stay here forever." Eli nodded slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where will you go?" Kai shrugged. "North, maybe. Somewhere quiet." Eli wanted to say something, anything to make him stay, but the words wouldn't come. He just stood there, hands at his sides, heart heavy in his chest. As Kai walked toward the edge of the property, the wind picked up, carrying a faint sound from the canyon. Eli frowned. It was distant but sharp, like the echo of a shout. Kai stopped too. turning his head toward the sound. For a moment, they both stood still, listening. The air seemed to hold its breath. Then Kai turned back toward Eli, his eyes alert. "Someone's out there," he said. Eli's hand went to his hat. "Could be travelers," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "Could be nothing." Kai looked toward the hills, then back at him. "You've got a kind heart," he said quietly. "But not everyone out here does." Eli nodded. "I learned that too." The sound faded after a while and the land grew quiet again. But something in that silence felt different, tense, waiting. Kai hesitated, then untied his bundle and set it down again. "Maybe I'll wait one more day," he said. Eli gave a small smile. "Wouldn't mind that." That night they sat outside watching the stars. The air was cool and still. The sky stretched wide above them. Kai spoke softly about the constellations, how his people had names for each one, how they believed the stars were windows where ancestors watched from the other side. Eli listened, the rhythm of Kai's voice calm and deep. He thought about all the empty nights he'd spent under the same sky, never feeling its beauty until now. When the fire burned down to glowing embers, Kai turned to him. "You've been alone a long time," he said gently. Eli nodded. "Most of my life." Kai looked into the distance. "You don't have to stay that way." Eli didn't answer right away. The truth of those words sank deep. He had built his life around quiet and distance, convincing himself it was peace when it was really emptiness. Now, sitting beside someone who had seen hardship and still carried hope, he realized how hollow that peace had been. Morning came soft and golden. The world looked almost new again. Kai helped Eli bring water from the well, their laughter mixing with the sound of the bucket rope. It felt easy, natural, like the start of something instead of the end. But before noon, Kai turned serious. "It's time," he said again, this time certain. "I can't stay hidden forever. There are things I have to face." Eli nodded slowly. "I know." They stood in silence for a moment. The wind moved gently through the grass. Kai reached out his hand. Eli took it firm and steady. "You gave me back my strength," Kai said quietly. "Maybe someday I can return the favor." Eli smiled faintly. "You already did," he said. Kai smiled, then turned toward the open land. He walked away with an easy, steady stride, the sun behind him casting a long shadow across the earth. Eli watched until he was just a small figure on the horizon. When the sound of footsteps faded, Eli turned back to the cabin. The silence was there again, but it wasn't the same. It no longer felt heavy. It was full, like the pause between heartbeats. He looked around the small place he had once called lonely, and saw life everywhere. The marks of footsteps, the mug on the table, the faint smell of wood smoke. He sat on the porch as the day slowly turned to evening. The sky shifted from blue to gold, and he felt something steady inside him, warm, alive, real. He had saved a man once tied to a tree, but in truth that man had saved him just as much. As the first stars appeared above the canyon, Eli leaned back and closed his eyes. The wind brushed softly against his face. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. His heart, quiet for so long, beat strong and steady like the rhythm of the land itself.